Warren Ingram with the interview you don't want to hear this evening. If you are somebody who is worried about the state of tertiary education in South Africa, and you're worried that if you have young kids and you don't know what the standards are going to be like, you don't know whether or not your kids are going to be globally competitive if they go to a South African university. For many years, South African universities have been held in very, very high regard. The medical schools have been brilliant. The accounting schools have been brilliant. The professional qualifications that South Africans have been able to achieve through South African universities have and still remain very, very solid, globally competitive qualifications. Will it be the same 10 years from now? And frankly, nobody knows the answer to that. We don't. Warren Ingram.
We don't, and I think, and it's certainly not meant to be a dig at the tertiary education system we have today, but what it is sparked by are now many hundreds of questions from parents of young children that I've dealt with. I mean, since the university the big university protests last year, and those are parents saying, we can't ignore the prospect that these universities get put under strain, and therefore we need to plan for an education outside of South Africa. And so that's where this comes from. It's not just, you and I sitting and saying, oh, well, we're worried about what universities might be. Let's figure it out. These are real concerns from South African parents, and those concerns are not going away. So it's something people need to be aware of. And I think the thing here is just to understand it, especially if your kids are young, to just understand what sort of commitment we're talking about from a financial perspective.
And I mean, you may go onto a website and you may look at, say, for example, UK university fees at £10,000 a year, and you translate that and you go, okay, call it 200,000 Rand a year, in order to get a year of undergraduate studies at a UK university. And you may think to yourself, I can afford that. The trouble is, when your children aren't British and haven't gone through the school system in the UK, they have to pay foreign visitors' fees, which are a lot higher. You've gone and done a study into some of the fees. Scare us.
So just per year, you're looking at, if we say, a couple of American universities.
Tell us ones you've identified.
So University of Michigan, and then Brown University, and those would cost in the region, at close of yesterday's exchange rates, because it's moving so fast, around 660 to 760,000 Rand a year for the fee. That's not you're not feeding them.
You're not getting them there. You're not accommodating them.
That's just to sit in class. Then, if we look at the UK, so I mean, everyone, always talks about Oxford, so I just did it, and that's about 465,000, so actually not as bad as the Americans.
Oxford's cheaper than the Americans. Okay, yeah.
And then, Edinburgh University, also a good university, let's say 380, just to round up. And then for all of those that are looking at the colony, so at Australia, around about the same, so 380,000. And then Canada, about 470. And then an interesting one, because more and more South African kids are studying in Asia. And so if we look at a place like Singapore University, or it's actually called Nanyang Technological University, about 180,000 Rand a year. So those are the tuition fees.
But to keep this simple, we need sort of a median, I suppose. So,
I did one example, just of a reasonable amount. And so you're looking at about another 220,000 Rand a year. That would be for your food, your lodging, your books and supplies.
Okay. So what baseline number are you using? I mean, can we choose a number, say 400,000 plus 220 or something along those lines?
Pretty much, yeah. So I actually went for the Americans because that's so it is a bit more expensive.
Right.
And so you're coming in at about 970,000 Rand a year.
Can we just call it $1 million?
And that's what's interesting. So
because the kids, they're going to want, if they're not, they've got to be 21. Actually, we should send them to America. They'll drink less beer because you've got to be 21 to drink beer in America. Yeah.
And what I looked at were actually, so some South African parents that I know whose kids are sitting overseas. And for example, their kids are at New York University, and they were saying to me about 2 years ago, that it's costing them around $1 million a year per child.
How do they afford that?
Yeah. So what I said was, if you've got a youngster that's just about to start school, then looking at their school career plus a year, just to kind of give you a gap year to send them out and tell them to go and work for a bit, you're looking at about, in future value terms, it's about 14.8 million Rand, 14 years time. So in today's money, that's about 3.9. And if you're going to put that into sort of a typical, just a typical balanced unit trust in South Africa, just somewhere where you can put a debit order, once a month, you're looking at now, starting kind of, 1st of January, you're looking at about 22 to 25,000 Rand a month that you need to set aside per child to get that.
And that's assuming a return of 10% a year.
Correct.
And that's assuming that the Rand stays at what level?
Well, this is yesterday's level.
Yeah.
So,
oh my word!
The good news, Bruce, is that I'm sure the Rand will strengthen somewhat in the next while, and I can see you just losing all colour in your face. But that's the point. Is one needs to make real decisions here, because it's not just a case of saying I'll just send my kids to international universities. That is in 14 years' time, 14 million Rand. That's a lot of people's entire retirement capital. And so if that's the kind of decision you're going to make as a parent, just understand that you're pretty much sacrificing your entire retirement on that one decision.
And then at best you do that then, and you get yourself an undergraduate degree. And what is the value of that going to be 14 years from now?
I did, to be fair, I did choose a 4-year. A 4 year. So my view is that as parents now, that is the reality shock. And it's, I'm sorry, but those are the numbers. And so I think a couple of things. One is investigating what is going to happen to education, and without kind of going to the fear mongering of just that everything's going to collapse, and just understanding how our technology will change. So to me, a lot of this will probably, if we're talking about 14 years time, you'll find distance learning is a whole different ballgame in 14 years time. I just think back to when I was at school. I think I passed maths and science because of a man called William Smith.
You watched him on TV?
I watched him on TV, and he was infinitely better than most of my maths with respect to my maths and science teachers. And I think if that's a very small example of how things can work, then I suspect things will change.
We can't be Pollyanna-ish about this, though. If you are somebody who has a real concern about the future of education, and you do want your kids to have the option of a global qualification, and you want them to have a 4-year degree, it is going to cost you many multiples of millions of Rand. If you haven't started saving for that prospect yet, you need to start putting money away, and putting money away fast.
Exactly the point. And I think also to the big education groups that we've got in this country, private education groups, this is a major market opportunity. I mean, this is something you need to be offering quality international education to South African kids to stop this drain of money and brains.
But things also, once you've gone and you've spent in 14 years' time 15 million Rand on an education, you then got to get a return on investment. And I don't know what's going to be, salaries are going to be like 15 years from now, or 20 years from now when these kids graduate, but they're going to have to earn back that money in order to justify their level of education they've received.
Absolutely. And I think if you actually just look at America as an example, look at the kids that have gone to varsity in the last few years, and how many of them are serving coffee at Starbucks with very expensive degrees and going nowhere. So, I mean, I think, this is a conversation parents should be having now, and not just from a base of fear, but from a kind of a long-term rational planning point of view of actually what should a good education be at that time? Is it just a traditional university thing? Is that what you should be giving your child now? And those are good questions to ask. I don't have the answers, unfortunately. But if you're determined, then really you need to set aside your 22 to 25 a month.
Don't come back. Warren Ingram from Galileo Capital.